Classic Movies Film Festival. The first SAG actor you ever directed was
Joan Crawford.
How old were you?
22.
Sure. Tell, I think a lot of people know, but tell people what you directed her.
It was a pilot, NBC pilot called Night Gallery. It was a trilogy. There were two other directors, Joe Sargent and Boris Segal and myself. I did the center section. They're all three were written by Rod Serling, and of course we were all completely smitten and seduced by the Twilight Zone for so many seasons. So just to get to meet him, and the first person I actually directed, the first person I said action to, with a DGA card in my pocket, recently acquired, was Rod Serling. I directed the interstitials between each of the different paintings.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. That's good stuff. So you were growing up, well, I got to ask you, Joan was she Joan Crawford-esque?
She was more. She was not Mommy Dearest. Let's put it that way. That was not my experience. She was kind and she was understanding, and she forgave my acne, and the Clearasil that attempted to cover it up. She was she was elegant, and she was selling Pepsi-Cola left and right. She brought huge ice chests with Mountain Dew and Pepsis, and every single day gave it to the crew, and she said, if you don't belch after drinking, it's an insult. So she was having a good time.
You, I think I read, maybe I heard, but did you said that you were grateful to her because she treated you as if you knew what you were doing when you probably didn't.
I did not know what I was doing half the time because it was intimidating. I had never worked with a crew that size before. I'd been making 16mm movies with friends at college, and I had made an unfinished 35mm film about a bicycle race, and then I had done Amblin in 35, which got me my contract at Universal. But that was a crew of 15 people, and I was surrounded by mostly men in 1968 in blazers with hats and ties. The gaffers, the electricians, the grips, they wore ties.
The grips wore ties?
Yes. It was a changing of the guard. It was the evolution from Henry King and King Fedor to Martin Scorsese and Brian De Palma. That's what was happening.
So when you were growing up and you started to fall in love with the movies, what movies sort of framed your outlook on life? What did you go to again and again?
Well, what was available to me when I was very, very young, my parents were really truant officers about what I was allowed to see in a movie theater. They were really careful about that. And I was living in New Jersey in Haddonfield when The Searchers opened, and a couple of my friends had seen The Searchers. I was 10 years old, and they were saying it was great. And my parents said, no, we heard about it, and we heard it's not right for you're too young to see it. And I remember going into the cookie jar and getting 50 cents out of the cookie jar and dimes, and walking 1.5 miles to the theater and paying and got my ticket, and I saw The Searchers. And never told my parents I had done that.
You turned out okay. So when you were doing Jaws, which was a film about a shark,
That one.
You met Henry Hathaway, who directed True Grit and Niagara and Nevada Smith, and he said to you, and I'm curious, it seems like this really stuck with you, never let them see your fear, your indecisiveness.
Right. He just said, let me give you a piece of advice before you go off to shoot your fish movie. He called it the fish movie. he said, I know it's a there's a book out, and I know it's the fish book, and you're making the fish movie, but just remember one thing. He said, if you have any doubts about a shot or about something you want to tell the crew and you don't quite know what to say, figure really fast what to say and say anything, because you cannot. The second you show weakness, they're going to swamp you. And I remember that, him saying that. You're just going to swamp you.
And that sense, that feeling that of some degree of panic, that's fueled you. You've used that to help you along during these productions.
I did, and it turned out that I showed a lot of insecurity, I showed a lot of doubt, and it was the ocean and the mechanical shark that swamped me, not anybody in the crew. They were great with me. They were great with me because I held the keys to their going home. I was the warden of Jaws. And when I finished the movie, they got to go home. And we had a 58-day schedule, and when we got to 72 days, they started being really nice to me. How can we help you? What more can we do to speed you along in finishing this? Because we were out on the water. We weren't like in a tank or in a lake. We were 12 miles past the Cape Pogue Lighthouse, past Menemsha on Martha's Vineyard. And we're at sea making this movie. And it was nothing like it has ever happened to me since.
So your sister has described you as a lonely kid. And I'm curious how that experience, some bullying, ultimately your parents divorcing when you were, 15, which is pretty close to the same age that...
Yeah, I was 17.
That's exactly how old I was when my parents divorced, split up. And it's not easy. Like you think, oh, he's fine. But your opinions of your parents has been so fully formed by them that it's kind of shocking to realize how fallible they are.
Yeah.
So how did that experience, and this is a very broad question, but how did that experience then, as we move forward, inform you as you set about the process of E.T.?
Well, I think when you go through something like that, and when any child goes through, an episode where your parents, who you trust and love unconditionally, but both of them come to you and my 3 younger sisters and just say, we are separating and we're going to be living not only in 2 different houses, but in 2 different states. The world collapses, the sky falls on your head. And it just, I'm sure those here that are children of a divorced household or themselves have been divorced, and they know the responsibility of how you have to super take care of your kids. It's something that never goes away, and it comes out in the wash, and certainly it's come out in a lot of my movies, and both indirectly, subconsciously, and in the latest film that I've just made comes out very directly.
E.T. is pretty direct. I mean, there's literally an absentee father throughout the film. So the concept for E.T., and you clearly you'll correct me where I'm wrong. I mean, it's like 2 different ideas and some pressure to make a sequel to Close Encounters all coming together.
Well, what happened was I had been working on an actual literal script about my parents' separation and divorce. And I had been working on ideas about that and what it did to my sisters and myself. And this is back in 1976 when I was actually filming Close Encounters. And we got to the scene, we were shooting in Mobile, Alabama, and we got to the scene where the puck, we call the little extraterrestrial puck, where he comes down from the ship and he does the hand signs with Francois Truffaut. Come on. Can you believe that? I mean, one of the greatest honors of my life that he said yes to that. And we're shooting this scene, and I suddenly thought, wait a second, what if that little creature never went back to the ship? What if the creature was part of a foreign exchange program? Dreyfus goes, he stays, or she stays, and that was the feeling that I had. What if I turned my story about divorce into a story about children, a family trying to fill the great need and creating such responsibility. A divorce creates great responsibility, especially if you have siblings. We all take care of each other. And what if Elliot, or the kid I hadn't quite dreamed up his name yet, needed to, for the first time in his life, become responsible for a life form, to fill the gap in his heart.
So, but before we got to E.T., so this idea is germinating, and then you've gone from this successful, making these good made-for-TV movies, Duel in particular, and then you start making features of Sugar Land. Duel's great. Let me ask a quick Duel story, because it shows, I don't know, it runs counter to